The Shallow Shallow, welcome to Tips and Tales with Tawny the Neuro Mermaid. And one of the most powerful things we can do is share our story. So stories have the ability to inspire others, show what's possible, raise awareness, and shift perspectives. Today, I'm thrilled to have Wasif here and sharing his story. So I'm going to give him the floor.
Sure. Hello. I am absolutely honored to be here today. So, a lot of people watching or seeing me for the first time might not know, but obviously you, Tawny, know very well that I am a young stroke survivor. I had a stroke, an ischemic stroke, should I say, in May of 2022. It's actually a pretty crazy story. So, what happened was I got home in the mid-afternoon. This was the Friday of Memorial Day weekend of 2022, and it was really nice out. And I decided, okay, I went out drinking the night before. I do feel a little hungover. Maybe I should go for a quick jog, maybe sweat out the demons a little bit and feel a little bit better because I always notice that when I sweat, like if I go out and play basketballs or go into a sauna after drinking the night before, it usually kills the hangover.
Yeah.
So I decided to go for a jog. And then maybe 10, 15 minutes into my jog, I it was like a blanket, like a white sheet went over my face. All I saw was white and I went down hard.
Wow.
And then when I like came to and like brushed the dirt off, I stood up and looked down and saw my knees were bloody from like hitting the ground so hard. And what was weird is that I couldn't see out of my right eye, but I had full vision on my left eye and like just feeling super like weak all over,
Okay.
almost as if I had woken up from a dead sleep. So
Totally.
then I slowly made my way back to my apartment and then jumped in the shower and just like rinsed the dirt off. And then I went and
And
grabbed
this
my
you still
keys.
can't see out of your one eye. So you're still
Yeah,
like, okay, just
still blind in one eye. Yeah.
and you're just like,
And
let me
then,
shower real quick. Not like I know I just like to
yeah,
preface that because when people are like, I'm like, you don't always think like you're having a your brain is having like a whole thing right now. You're not even like
yeah,
sometimes you go and you are able to do other things. Like you drove yourself and were able to like get in the shower. Okay, sorry. Continue.
yeah. I remember thinking, should I shower? But then I looked down and my knees were still like bleeding. And I had dirt all over me. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to get an infection or anything. So let me just like rinse myself off real quick. And then I got out of the shower and then grabbed my keys and I was like, okay, let's go to the hospital. And then I remember thinking, wait a minute, I can't see out of one eye. Like I don't have depth perception. I can't get into a car.
Thank heavens. Okay, so you're still
Yeah,
rational enough. Wow, to be like,
yeah.
no, I shouldn't drive. Okay.
So then I was going to call like 911 for an ambulance, but then I was like, hold on, even with insurance, I don't know if I can afford $1,000 joyride on like an ambulance. So I decided to call an Uber instead and called an Uber and threw on my flip-flops and went to the hospital. And then in the hospital, like I remember, I don't know if people were just out drinking because it was Memorial Day weekend, but there was this older looking gentleman. He looked like he had like had a good fall too because his head was like bleeding like right above his eyebrow. And I remember that very distinctly sitting down. And then I went to like the triage nurse and sat down and told them what was going on. And then while I was doing that, a younger looking gentleman about my age, because I was 26 at the time, maybe this guy was like a little bit younger. I remember thinking, oh wow, he looks like a kid, but he has like a deep voice of an adult. He comes in and clear as day. I remember him saying, hey, I'm having chest pains. What do I do? And then they take care of him real quick, or other nurses rush to him and take care of him. And then the triage nurse, like my triage nurse, comes back to me and says, okay, you can't see out of one eye. Let's get you checked out. And then he asked me for like my date of birth, height, weight, all that crap, and like my insurance. And I remember thinking, instead of talking to him, because I already was already like a little dizzy and I was having a hard time talking. So I go into my wallet and give him my insurance card and my ID, which had like my height, weight,
Uh-huh.
everything you need to know about me. And then while the guy was like looking at it and entering my information, I remember losing consciousness, like at his desk. And then I heard him like calling for like help. And then like I'm on the ground because I lost consciousness. And they like picked me up and threw me into like a wheelchair and brought me into one of those rooms or makeshift rooms that was just like four like curtains as like an emergency room, like private, semi-private room. And then he like one of the nurses like put his hands under my armpits to help me. And I was like, no, no, I can do this. And I got up and sat down and laid down on the gurney or like their makeshift hospital bed. And I think that was a mistake, and I'll get to that why. And then they took uh, a healthy amount of blood to check my blood. And the whole time they were asking me like, how much do you have to drink today, or how much drugs have you taken? And
Yeah.
I was honest with them, because I had alcohol in my system.
Yeah.
So I told them, hey, I had a lot to drink the night before, but not a drop today, and no drugs. The only drugs I had taken that day was like an Advil.
Yeah. It sucks when you're young, they automatically assume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they were like, he's 26. It's Memorial Day weekend. Like he's been drinking. He's having a hard time
Totally.
talking. He's
Mine was
dizzy.
Cinco de Mayo. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So
Much.
so then after taking a good amount of blood, they handed me like a little cup for a urine sample, and I looked around. I was in a room made of like curtains, and I was like, I'm not gonna, urinate in a cup right here. So I got up and walked over to the bathroom, which was in front of like the nurses' desks. So they saw me walking. And then, you know, after I did what I had to do, I came back, handed in my urine sample, and laid back down in my bed. And then they came in and checked my eye. It was like so weird how they checked my eye. I'll never forget it. They put like an eye drop that like burned really, really bad. And what it did was it numbed up my eye. And after they numbed it, they like got like this little like stylus looking thing and poked at like my eyeball. And what that was supposed to do, they said it was supposed to like make sure that there wasn't any pressure built up in my eye causing blindness.
Thank you for
But
this.
yeah, I remember thinking like I didn't feel anything because my eye was numb, but I felt something like hitting like my cornea.
Well, and like you can see, because I know if they're like, don't look, right? They're probably trying to block you from looking, but like your eye is like your other eye
Yeah, I
can
saw it.
see.
Yeah. And when the numbness went away, my vision came back, which was super, super weird. Yeah. But what they didn't do was run a CAT scan with contrast. They ran a regular CAT scan and didn't see anything wrong with my neck, which was a neck injury was the reason for the stroke. And then a teleneurologist came in, said, okay, maybe you're having a neurological event, but your eyesight, there's nothing wrong with your eye, so on and so forth. And then they took like the computer away, and then a hospitalist, like the ER doctor, came over and said, okay, there's nothing wrong with your regular CT scan. And so we're going to discharge you unless you want to stay. And I remember thinking, okay, well, if they're giving me an option to leave, then clearly nothing's wrong. And
Up to you. Yeah, like, well, I
yeah,
guess.
so I was thinking, okay, well, I can either stay here or if I'm clear to go, then I'm going to go. So then I walked out of the hospital and I decided to
Because we
call another.
rationalize if you can walk that
Yeah,
clearly, like, I'm okay, and that does not mean
yeah,
you're okay.
yeah. But they only ran a regular CT,
Yeah,
not a CT scan that looks at not a
with
CT
the
scan with
contrast.
contrast that
Okay.
looks at like your veins and arteries
Thank
all in
you
your
for
head.
making that distinction.
Yeah,
Yeah. The contrast is a big difference.
yeah.
Okay.
So then when I called the Uber, they brought me to the nearest ER, which was a town over.
Okay.
So then I called another Uber to bring me back to my apartment, which again, was a town away. And then on the way home, there was a Wawa, which is like a massive convenience store chain in New Jersey. And I remember asking the Uber driver to pull over so I can use the bathroom. He, of course, obliged. And then I walked into the Wawa, and I remember feeling like the cold air hit my skin because it was air conditioned and it was pretty hot that day. which
Oh
was another assumption that they thought that I was just dehydrated because I was running, had been drinking,
yeah.
and it was really hot. So
Yeah.
I walk into the Wawa, and halfway to the bathroom, I go down again, like hard in the Wawa. Like I remember feeling my knees just like wobble a little bit, kind of like how it would feel after getting hit really hard in like football. Because like I played football in high school, and sometimes after getting hit like really, really hard by like an older kid, I would wake up or not wake up, like I would stand up and my knees would like wobble from getting so like hit so hard. I
Forgetting
remember
how to
thinking, oh my
speak.
God, did I just get hit? And then I go down, and then like a lot of the customers at that Wawa like came over and like helped sit me up against like an aisle. And even then they started asking, okay, it's Memorial Day weekend,
You
you
should
look
have
young.
done.
Yeah, how much did you have to drink? What drugs did you take? How much of it did you take? Like yada yada yada. And
Did
then
you
they
still have
called.
the hospital wristband on? Because you had just left. Like, so did you still have your
Yeah,
hospital? It's like, no,
I would assume so because I wouldn't have had the ability to like rip it off, and those
yeah.
things are pretty strong. So they call an ambulance, and then that ambulance took me back to the same hospital I was just at. And I think that's when they ran a CT scan with contrast, or they ran another test and determined, oh my God, this kid is having a serious neurological event.
Finally.
Yeah, so they transferred me to another hospital, which was 2 or 3 towns away, which had a really good neurological department and a neurosurgeon on call. So I get there and they run a couple more CT scans. And by this time, my mom, my dad, my aunt, and my sister had gone to the hospital. And then that CT scan revealed that I did have a massive stroke and my brain was swelling like crazy. So within like minutes, they had my mom sign like a waiver to do emergency surgery. And then I remember them like wheeling me away. And then I went under for said surgery. And then when I woke up, the right side of my skull was missing because they removed the entire right side to let my brain swell without being crushed under the pressure of my skull. So that was gone. And I remember just feeling like the the pain of having like my skull sawed into. Yeah. And I remember thinking, okay, it's pain, like pain goes away. But then what was weird is that like I couldn't move or feel my left side from like the shoulder down. And I still think it's funny because, I'm freaking out and the neurosurgeon is like standing over me and he's like, yeah, so you did have a stroke, so you're gonna feel some weakness. And I was like, weakness? This isn't weakness. Like I can't feel my left side. What did you do to my left side? You said you were gonna take my skull, not my limbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
And
think
that's
they
when
notice when they say things like that, like the
like
word.
weakness, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when I was I had just turned 26, so I was still under my mom's insurance. And what had happened was like her company was switching insurances from one insurance provider to another. But even so, I needed to stay at least 1 month at the hospital where they did the surgery to recuperate enough to be transferred to inpatient rehab. So that began a really long month of just sitting in a hospital bed, unable to move. And the TV kind of sucked because, it's a hospital TV. They don't have like good speakers. The speaker was like on the remote. So you had to have the remote like on your chest to be able to hear, and being poked and prodded by strangers for like a month straight because they needed a blood sample every day for whatever reason.
Yeah. It's constant when you have a neurological,
Yeah,
they're checking you
yeah,
like there's no, everyone's like, well, good, you can just rest. And you're like, no, there's no
yeah,
sleeping between all the beeping, all the machines going, the constant
yeah,
tests. Like, so a month of that in the hospital,
yeah,
like, that's why I'm just
yeah. A
hard.
full 30 days. I got admitted on the May 29th and didn't leave to go to inpatient rehab until the 4th of July that same year.
Okay.
And they were like baffled because they were like, wow, he's 26, clearly in great shape because my resting heart rate was like pretty low. I used to run every single day. Like I only had a gym membership to use the treadmill.
So do they family history or anything or just
Um,
one?
so both of my mom's parents have had strokes, and her mom, like my grandma, had a couple heart attacks and even like a double bypass. But that was from like a lifetime of eating fried foods and like fatty foods and like neglecting her body. But like I was in really good shape. I like only ate chicken. So then like they even like poked a hole in like my neck while I was out and stuck like a tube down there to see if there was like something with my heart. But
Wow.
my heart was super healthy. They were like, "Yeah, you're only alive because your heart is so healthy." I was like, "Okay." So what the hell like happened?
Yeah.
There was a carotid artery dissection. So like my carotid artery, it looked like somebody had taken a pair of scissors and just like snipped it in half. And I don't remember how that could have happened. Like I didn't get into a car accident where like I would have had whiplash or fallen, hit my head hard enough to like, have an arterial like dissection.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. So they said it was just spontaneous. Sometimes it can just happen, whether it's high blood pressure or what have you. But yeah, that's like really insane. I met somebody on Instagram who had the same thing where it just happened. Like your artery that like supplies your brain with blood just like snaps in half.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're like, I was healthy.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I was doing that caused
Yeah.
it. There's no way I could have prevented it. And that's what,
Yeah.
can
And
be
if they
horrible.
had run a CAT scan with contrast to see into like my blood vessels and arteries, then they would have caught it. Instead, they were like, "Oh, you're dehydrated."
So
And I'm thinking,
keynote for everyone listening, that's why it's important to not just to say, I want the contrast because
yeah,
same thing. I had had MRIs, I had had tons of scans but never with contrast.
yeah. And even like my lawyer now, who is helping me press charges against that hospital, was saying like, and even his like expert neurologist was like, I don't think dehydration causes blindness ever.
No, no.
Like if you're
Someone's
dehydrated, like
blind.
you can get loopy and have a hard time talking, but you never go blind.
I don't know how, yeah, you let a patient go who was blind. Like you just go, okay,
Yeah,
well, you should be fine. Good luck with your
yeah.
blindness. That just
They were
happened.
like,
Like,
sleep it off, kiddo. You're a healthy young kid. Call us in the morning.
am I, oh, your head hurts real bad.
Yeah,
Let's just numb you up and then send you home. You'll be
yeah,
fine. Don't scan her.
yeah,
That's what I said. I go, you validated my pain by just numbing me. Why don't we check under the hood before you just knock somebody out? Let's
yeah.
maybe that would be interesting. But wow. Okay, so then you went to outpatient or
Inpatient rehab
inpatient, sorry,
was
inpatient rehab.
yeah,
Okay.
where I spent
And
another like month doing like OT, PT, and speech therapy every day
okay.
before coming home. But before I came home, I learned to like walk with a quad cane. I say barely walk in parentheses because that's what Maddie said in her book too. Like she was barely in parentheses walking with a quad cane because it's true, like when you're walking with a quad cane, you're not really walking. You're like taking a step and dragging your left leg behind you. And I can't help but think that like, my walking would have been a lot better when I got to inpatient had I done PT and OT at the hospital after my stroke that first month. But they just didn't have like an OT or a PT like on standby. Like my only PT was standing, bringing a little bit of weight through my left leg and transferring from like my hospital bed to a chair next to the bed. And that was my PT.
It's always so hard after the
Yeah,
fact. We learn later. We're like, I'm like, I wish I would have advocated for more therapies
yeah,
but we don't know that. You don't know that
yeah.
how critical it is, those.
And I'm sure I would have been able to like stand more and do a lot more weight bearing had there been like a doctor there, or like I would have could have asked like my uncle or my cousin or even like my mom to help, but they weren't gonna let that. Like they weren't gonna let a non-trained like pro they were only gonna let trained professionals help me get out of and into bed.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's so funny because my inpatient like hospital was the same hospital that Maddie was at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
Kessler in West Orange, New
okay.
Jersey.
Yeah, a lot of you guys over there, it's like all the same thing. And I mean, I guess in a way, because we are so rare, of course, we would all kind of know the same people have the same places, have
Yeah,
the same doctors and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. But on a positive note, and also for early survivors, when I think just because like as soon as it happens, you go to the internet and you Google and you think my life is over, like I'm not going to be able to do all these things, like you just see all this bad stuff. So like what I love is showcasing and sharing that, like, just because maybe it did not look great in the beginning for anyone, that's what recovery is. It is pushing through the yuck and the bad, and like, but to be able to barely walk out of inpatient. So then did you do outpatient? Were you able to
yeah. I came home
have
on
that kind of
August 9th
okay.
of that year, still without the right side of my skull. When I was out of bed, like not laying down with my feet up, I had to wear like this helmet, which, whatever. Yeah, it was uncomfortable, but
You do what
I
you got
could,
to do to be alive.
yeah, I was still like walking somewhat. Like when I came home, I did home therapy for a little bit, which that helped me like ditch the wheelchair at home. So after home therapy, before I started going to an outpatient like clinic, I was able to like start walking around a lot more with my cane inside the house. And every now and then, like with a family member, I would go outside and like walk around the block. And then I started doing outpatient therapy where I would go to like a clinic and work with professionals and have like, work on like a bike or like a total gym where I would do squats with my own body weight. I did that for, I want to say, 6 months or so. And 4 months after my surgery to remove my skull was on May 28th, the day I had the stroke. And then that September, I went back to the hospital to get my skull back. And I remember thinking, like, okay, that's pretty good. Like, I don't have to wear a helmet anymore. If I fall, which I'm sure I will, like, I'll have like my own like bones protecting me. But
Huge.
for some reason, yeah, for some reason, waking up from that surgery was just as painful as waking up from the first surgery because like it was my own skull. Sometimes what happens is people's skulls like get infections and they have to throw away their skull and have like a synthetic like mold made
Wow.
of their head. It was my skull. So they had to like drill it and like reconstruct it with like metal plates. And I think when the anesthesia wore off and I came out of the anesthesia induced coma, like all that pain hit me again. And I was like, oh, okay.
Indescribable. I mean, your head
Yeah.
literally being
Yeah.
attached in plates. So recovery for that then was, did you have
I,
inpatient, outpatient?
so like I stayed there the night before they could, you know, get like, there was like a little stopper poking up from like my skin where it like drained extra like fluid. And then the next day they were able to pull that out and I came home and started doing like therapy again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that from
But
home.
what was really annoying though about the surgeries is, it was a major hospital, like a big, big major hospital system in New Jersey, but all they could give me for the pain was like an IV Tylenol drip or like Tylenol, like pills. And I'm thinking like, I know you have something stronger. Like I know it. So just give me something stronger. I think they gave me oxycodone one time for after my first surgery. But other than that, I just had to take like Tylenol and hope for the best.
How they're managing pain, it's, there
Yeah.
are issues. It needs to be resolved, and it sucks. I feel like being younger, we're even more judged. Like if I was an older patient, I feel like they would give you the pain meds, but they're like, "Oh, I don't want you to get addicted." And you guys have a tendency. I'm like, "You guys, like you're lumping me in with people that if you look at my medical history, I never abused them. Like I don't want to have pain meds
Yeah,
unless I really absolutely need it. So I'm sorry that you had to go through
yeah,
pain and have them just offer you Tylenol
yeah,
when you're like, I'm in so much indescribable
yeah,
pain, and you're just like, here's a Tylenol.
yeah. And even if like I did start to get hooked on it, it's not like I can just like, hop out of bed and walk over to my car and like drive somewhere to like
Get it.
buy it off of somebody.
Like I always say, like, look at the person's chart, like look at our medical history,
Yeah,
like before you just judge just because we're young. It's frustrating.
yeah. And then I got home and started going back to therapy and what have you. But then I switched rehabs to a rehab that's like 10 minutes away instead of a half hour away
That'd be nice.
with, yeah, with much better therapists. And fast forward 2 years, I find myself here in 2025.
It's incredible. And what you've shown, like seeing your journey that you, I mean, have shared, your workouts, just, I mean, you're walking so many things that I luckily have gotten to see because I've been a part of the journey. Um, but to
Yeah, that
everybody,
actually reminds me, I think I have to make another video because I just had another surgery, getting a baclofen pump put in because, as you know, one of the side effects of having a stroke is spasticity and tone, where your brain can't communicate with your affected side, telling the muscles to loosen up. So you're just always really, really tight. And because of that, I developed some severe foot drop. And even with a bioness sending electricity down to my ankle, I couldn't walk heel to toe. And my toes were always like curled in. So if I stood in like the shower, I'd be standing on like my toes curled in, which would be very, very painful. So one of the solutions was a baclofen pump. It's like a cylindrical, like hollowed out tin about this big, kind of like a big tape measure, where they put it like right under your skin. They cut a little sliver in your like stomach and make a pocket out of your skin, squeeze it in, and then there's like a little like wire. They call it a catheter with the needle at the end, and they like put the needle like right between two of your vertebrae, and it sends baclofen, which is like a liquid muscle relaxer,
okay.
right to your spine to help with the tightness because like Botox just wasn't working for me, and the baclofen pills did like absolutely nothing.
How is this pump? So when did you have this surgery?
October 25th of 2024.
Oh, wow. So recently. Okay, so how are you
Yeah,
liking it so far?
it's it's doing really really well for my ankle and my toes. My toes aren't curled in at all, and with the Bioness on, when I walk, I feel that my heel is definitely hitting the ground first.
That's gonna
So
make
it's
me cry.
working.
I'm trying not to cry.
Yeah.
That makes me
No,
so
no, it
happy here for
it
you.
definitely feels good. Like my gait speed is improving, and I can't help but think that that's because my heel is hitting the ground first. So like naturally, without even knowing it, my brain is telling my left leg to bear more weight through it so I can like drive my right leg forward.
Yeah,
So
like
that's pretty cool. Yeah. But that was another like really, really painful surgery because the same surgeon that did my craniectomy and my cranioplasty did it too. And
no way. That's wild.
yeah,
So a neurosurgeon, like, wow.
yeah. And it's so funny because like when you hear about the surgeon, you go in for the consultation, they tell you, oh, it's outpatient. You'll go under and be home like later that day. And I'm thinking, wow, super, super like quick. But before you do it, you have to make sure like you have to go in for a trial to make sure your body like isn't allergic to it and that it'll actually work. So you
Okay.
go in. I went in 2 weeks before the surgery, and they put me under and they injected a little bit of baclofen like into my spine. And then when I woke up, they had like PTs there assessing if like I felt any looser, and I had felt just a little bit looser. And they said, okay, it's a little bit, not a lot. So if we put the pump in and titrate it so that a lot more goes into his spine, then he'll get looser. But
Okay, so
what was
adjust it.
yeah, what was really unfortunate though is that when they, injected the baclofen into my spine, like right into my spinal column, and they pulled the needle out, it left a little hole like in my spine, and I had a little bit of like a spinal fluid leak. So like when spinal fluid is leaking, that messes with your entire nervous system. I remember like going, like coming home the next day and having like this crazy headache and just feeling super, super dizzy. And then I had like a cup of coffee one morning. And then I went up to the bathroom just because I was feeling so bad. Then I sat down like on the toilet and I could hear my mom like messing around downstairs, like feeding the animals or what have you. And then I remember like I wasn't even like sad or like anxious or like emotional. Like it just felt like somebody had thrown like water in my face, like just like tears, like non-emotional tears, just like falling from my eyes. And then I remember looking down, and then I realized that, like I was drooling. I was like, that's not good. And then before I can even like think, like all the coffee, like the entire big mug of coffee I had drank, just like spewed out. And like I've had some pretty crazy vomit episodes from drinking a lot, like in school and stuff. But like I don't think I've ever thrown up that much like stomach bile in like one push. So then I got myself cleaned up. I told my mom what happened. She took like the bath mats that I had like vomited all over, threw it in the wash, and then helped me go downstairs. Then made me like a couple eggs just to get something in like my body. So I ate those eggs, and then I grabbed my like little pill organizer to take my morning meds. As soon as those morning meds like hit my stomach, like hit my tongue, I threw up all the eggs and like a lot more stomach bile. Yeah. So then I had some water and like went upstairs into my bedroom and just like laid down for I don't know a couple hours.
You go to the ER? What are we doing?
Uh, yeah, I wasn't in like a lot of pain or anything. It just felt like I was sick,
Okay.
like a crazy case of like the flu, almost as if like how you feel after getting like a flu shot or like a COVID booster. So then after like laying down for a couple hours, I was able to like get up and come back downstairs and go about my business. And then like the next day I felt completely fine, like nothing ever happened. So just for to be cautious, my mom emailed the surgeon and the surgeon said, yeah, it could be like a leak. And if it gets really bad, I can go back and they can like do something about it. But luckily, like I didn't have another episode like that, so I went in for the surgery to get the pump implanted. Yeah, I remember waking up super early, like around 4 in the morning, going to the hospital, and they wheeled me away for the surgery at 7:15 a.m. And I woke up at like 10:30. They were like, okay, just like relax and lay around for a little bit. You'll probably go home